I've got the blue button, and we are live. Jim C, what is up?
What is up?
You
How's it
tell
going?
me. How's your day going? You have a good
It's
day?
great. I just came back from a run. We ran probably 4 miles, and two of them were in a nice soaking rain. But we have it's easy to do when you have friends.
Mm,
We have a good run group that gets us through the winter. So
nice, that's good.
yeah.
So, I actually prepared for this today
Okay.
by,
Is this not a normal thing where you come
no, no, no,
prepared?
no.
Or?
I prepared for this by running a mile.
Oh, okay.
I never run, but I ate a whole entire pack of cookies and was like, you know
Felt
what?
compelled to go out and burn off some calories.
Well, it was on the treadmill, so it's not the
That's all
same.
right.
But I did a
Treadmills are good.
mile, and I did it in less than 10 minutes, so I was happy.
That's pretty good for never doing it. That's really good.
I was happy. And I was like, you know what? I realized while I was running, I was like, wait a minute. I'm talking to Jim tonight. He runs all the time. This is funny.
It's that first mile or whatever run, whatever length you do, you want to do it and leave yourself thinking you could do more.
Oh, I couldn't. I was not thinking that.
But you had a good experience. You had a good laugh, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay. But sometimes if you do it and then you like, I'm doing 5 miles, you never do 5 miles, you're gonna hate it and you'll never come back.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah. That's not going to happen. I'll probably do it more often.
yeah,
But
it's like anything. Like BMX has a community to it, running has a community to it.
yeah.
Once you find a community, you'll get into whatever sport or whatever thing. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, we could just jump right on the comparisons between running and riding. I feel like there are definitely comparisons to be made there.
Uh, when I first started running, I got into it when I was living in Austin, and like Austin's like huge capital BMX, and like I felt like everywhere I went, it was like I was talking BMX and talking BMX, or talking about warranting forks, talking
Mm,
about warranties, right?
yeah.
And the thing I was like, I don't know, getting old, and you kind of like time is ticking, and then the idea of a triathlon came up, and I realized there's shorter versions of it, and I was like, oh wait, I could do a triathlon. I've done a 5K before, and I ride bikes, obviously. Now
Mm-hmm.
can I swim? Short, spoiler alert, I can't really swim very well. but running kind of took over. It was just such an interesting raw, and like it was just this kind of raw thing, and allowed me to kind of go places easily. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt like with BMX, it's like a trick is over in a split second. We're running, and you do it for an hour. And so I don't. I would say the only comparisons that I ever found was downhill trail running,
Okay.
right? Like running a steep section downhill where it's like there's adrenaline, there is like you got to
Oh,
be
yeah.
decisive, and you're like like your foot placement, like boom, 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 and if you do it right, you can make it smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like if you hit like trails, if you pump everything right, you can get it smooth, and it's great all day. And you can kind of do that with like a downhill trail, and that's like the most thrilling, exhilarating thing I've done in running. Where otherwise, it's not. I wouldn't compare it as much. Maybe somebody else would do,
Interesting. I
but
didn't anticipate this being where that would go, but you did just mention the community
yeah,
aspect of it, which is an overlap, I think.
yeah, totally. It's
That's
I would say I wouldn't be running, and I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't be running if there wasn't a community. Like
yeah.
you didn't have the one thing I loved about running was that it was like the coolest thing about running was the fact that you can't tell how rich a person is, how maybe you could tell how good they are, but people could dress the part. Um, but everybody wears the same clothes essentially.
Okay.
So you can't tell what their job is, or how either how poor or how rich they are. I ran tonight with like, you know, like a guy that works HVAC, and then another one's like and teachers, and then throat surgeons and lawyers and like assistant DAs,
Hmm.
and like you cannot tell, and it's like it's a cool escape because nobody wants to talk about their work unless
Yeah,
you're
right.
to know, right? Like I think like none of the it takes a while for people to find out my history in running. Like I don't talk or history in BMX,
Yeah.
and like I don't say anything because it's like, yeah, it's great. I don't have to talk about that. And
That's
literally
kind
what
of cool.
happens. Yeah, there's a freedom in that. It's a freedom in the anonymity. You can get to be yourself.
Right, and I mean, I think you kind of hit into it in that it's like an escape from other things, similar to the way riding is, but in a different way almost.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Like riding is like most people don't go there, right? Like
Right.
most people don't have a passion they've done all their life, or they don't they struggle with the idea of like doing a trick over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fear in that of like judging yourself to not be good. Whereas
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of BMX is that I'll try this trick 50 times.
Yep.
It takes that to solve a problem. And it's not a judgment on me as a rider. We're just figuring it out.
Yeah. That's so interesting. This is not the way I thought that question would go at all. I thought I was gonna be like, yeah, it's pretty similar to all these, and this, and I was like, nope, actually, it's really different, and that's kind of cool.
I guess you could say it's controlling the mind. Like if
Mm,
you're running on a road,
yeah.
that is super hard because you can get bored easy,
Right.
right? But if you run trails, like you could do that. You could do 6 miles on trails and it goes by like no problem because you're so kind of focused in the moment. You're like watching for rocks, you're watching for roots, and it's like, and you're so present. We're on the road. You need things to distract you.
It
And,
it
but
totally makes sense.
like a trick, right? Like if you're going to about to bomb down a rail or do something that you're really scared of, the last thing you want in your head is like you thinking about, what's for dinner later.
Mm-hmm.
I cook this, or my some problem. My cat's being a jerk, right? Or something
Right.
like that. You don't. So I guess you could say there is a control of the mind
Mm-hmm.
of letting things in and letting things out and not dwelling on them or letting them getting in the way. But there's not as much consequence with running, unless you're
Yeah.
running downhill trails. But that's about it.
Huh. Well, also speaking about running, do you remember the first time we ever met?
I do not.
You don't, because this is a funny one.
Okay.
No, it was I was in Buffalo with my buddy Sponge, and we were met up with Charlie, and
Okay.
we were loading our bikes onto my car, and a group of people runs by, and all of a sudden somebody comes out of the group, and it's you, and you came up to the
Was it by the
car.
bridge? That spot? Or wait,
But
where was?
we were parked in just some parking lot where Charlie had us park, and we were loading our bikes up after riding, and you just popped out of the group of people who ran by, and it was like, and Charlie's just like, oh yeah, hey Jim, and then uh, you recognized Sponge as the X Up Nose Manual guy,
Yeah. Okay.
and that made him really happy. For
Oh,
one,
that's the best trick.
he was stoked that
He's
that
super
happened.
stoked. That's a great trick.
Well, I mean, the fact that you came up and you're like, "Oh, you're the X Up Nose Manual guy," that like made his day. But just the fact that we're loading up our bikes on the car and then randomly you pop out of a group of people,
It's so Buffalo. It's so small.
it was cool though. It was just fun.
That's cool. I'm
Yeah.
glad. I do remember that. Yeah. I don't quite remember what parking lot. I do remember talking to Sponge about that
Yeah.
and being like, "Oh yeah," because it's like I remember when that came out. It had to be like 2010, I
Dude,
believe.
it was a long time ago because we did it, or he did it in a video that we posted. Oh gosh, I can actually look it up right now.
Like the prefab ramps, right? Like
Yep. 10 years ago, the nose manuals by themselves were posted for
Yeah, right.
a nose manual contest. April 9th, 2012, and our video was before that.
Okay.
So,
I just remember like seeing. I mean, I don't remember much these days anymore, but like, I feel like I was sitting in the back offices with Logan,
Mm,
Logan Bio, and that came out. And obviously, he knew because he was working at Ray, so he knew everyone.
yep.
And he was just so amped. And obviously, I was amped because that's like a dream trick. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it'd be so wild if you could just get in and do it.
Yeah.
Like I always talk about, X up hangers.
Oh my gosh.
right? Like somebody's gonna do it.
Somebody has to do that.
Like just the obviously the level of riding and how great it is now. You're like, oh, somebody's gonna be like, oh, that's totally possible.
Holy cow! Just imagining that position and hanging over in it.
Yeah,
It's definitely doable, but whoever does it is gonna go through it to get it done, or it's gonna happen first try. It's either gonna be first try or you're gonna crash
yeah,
a lot.
yeah. Because you want to. I don't know if you have to get your back end over far first before the peg actually lands. I don't know. I don't know what and point it down, but I don't know. I can't wait to see someone do it.
Somebody,
I'll
hopefully, us putting it out there in the universe means somebody catches it somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's gonna be like, "Oh, that's totally possible,"
Yeah.
or already working, or maybe they already did it.
Yeah, it's gonna come out in an edit next week, and we're gonna be like, "Whoa, that's weird."
We just gotta say it.
uh, yeah. But so, what's BMX like for you today? You're still riding. I see you still doing it. So, what's your BMX
I've
life
been,
like?
I'm like back riding. I definitely took a hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
Two things really brought me back was I got a new bike. Sunday they're doing a new prototype.
Yeah.
So they sent me a frame because like I'm still sent me the 24 and I still like it. I think for me it's still like a creative outlet. It's this thing I'm still trying to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a skate park here. It's like the LaSalle skate park and it's on the water and they got a bowl. They finally built a bowl. The street phase, the two phases where it was like plaza stuff, and that's great, but it wasn't what I was fully interested at the time, or still not interested. But we got a bowl here, and the bowl is like tight. It's got some quirks to it.
Nice.
It's fun, and that's what kind of really motivated me. I was like, oh, this is all right. I like this bowl, and it's not perfect. And the bike, riding a fresh bike with, like, they fixed a bunch of the things that I would have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're like, all right, I'm not limited by, like, not they have
different geometry
and a little steeper head tube, and you're like, all right, now I could take that, and I'm not limited, so I'm gonna go and see what I can do. And the real, like, BMX now, I'll be 50 next year, but like, it's really the only goal with BMX is what it should probably always be, but when you're, I don't know, but it was just to put a smile on my face now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I'm smiling and not bleeding, I'm psyched.
Nice.
you take it for granted healing quickly. You don't heal as quick.
Yeah. Yeah, you hear that. I did not. Dude, you don't look like you're about to be 50.
I don't feel like it, but I definitely, there's stuff showing that I'm like, oh, like, I guess I am 50.
Yeah, well, I mean, from what you post, it seems like you're still having fun and bringing stuff back and doing new stuff sometimes.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising. Like, I was really shocked that getting in the bowl and riding and cruising and going fast, like all the instincts were there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, you think about it, like, you're doing something next year will be my 40th year, I would say, riding a BMX bike.
Yeah.
And like that stuff, all the instincts, you don't lose that. I guess when you do it every day for, 20 years, essentially, like 20 years at a higher level, that stuff becomes ingrained and you don't quite lose it. There's definitely stuff that I've lost, but I remember like doing my first bar spin again and just was like I just finally like got the nerve to throw it, and I did it. And like, when you've done so many bar spins, you don't.
Hands knew where to go. You were ready.
Yeah, exactly. I did it. It was like, oh, all right, that's awesome. I'm psyched.
It's almost like riding a bike, right?
It really is just like riding a bike.
Well, that's awesome. It's cool. It's cool that you're motivating people and stuff too, because I remember the ice pick to Fakie challenge thing that you did with, I'm not sure who it was that you did that with, but it was like It was a cool thing that I saw on Instagram that you did.
Yeah, my friend Puck, Brad Byrne, he lives in Richmond. He filmed like a bunch of stuff for Kink back in the day, shooting like photos, and then he just, I don't know, we go back to like 1999, like when I went down and met Rob Tibbs, and so we met then. I think he was like 16, but he's an awesome dude, and he just, I don't know, I'm excited. I'm stoked he put up the challenge, or he like took it, right? I kind of was like, because we both did it literally within minutes of each other.
Whoa, really? In like
Yeah,
real time?
Real time. Like we were like messaging back and forth, and he's like, "I'm going to the skate park." I'm like, "I am too." and so we just kind of messaging like, "Oh, I didn't do it," or blah blah blah, and all of a sudden, I get a video, and it's him doing it, and I literally just pulled it.
That's sick.
Like so, like I was like, "That's cool." Like I was created a moment, memory.
Yeah.
That, this like serendipitous, like, oh, it's just, yeah, we're doing it at the same time. We're not there together, but we're in spirit, and someone 800 miles away is doing the same thing at the same time as you. Like, all right, cool.
It's like Joe Dirt when he talks about looking at the moon, thinking his family's looking at the moon somewhere else.
You're ice picking at the same time as I am, are we?
Oh, that's funny. I wonder if you could like look at the source of the clips and see how close in time it actually happened.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask him. He's smart like that. He'll be able to figure it out.
That would be really cool. So, yeah, that's rad, man. And it's cool to hear the current life, but I kind of want to take things back a little bit.
Okay.
I'm gonna admit, and I talk about this stuff all the time, I'm not as well read on BMX as I should be, because I just grew up being obsessed with filming and riding.
When did you start riding?
2006.
Okay.
So it was like, mid 2000s era. But I asked a bunch of people some of the stuff that I should talk about today, and just talking about Kink a little bit was something that came up, and I feel like it's a good place to start. Well, actually, more of a question here would be like, is Kink where the start of your like BMX career would be at, or did anything come before that?
No, it would be Kink. I always like put it to it the fact that like getting on Kink, like there's a few things. I would say getting on Kink, becoming friends with Jeff Z, and Kink's like connection to props are the things that like vaulted me into BMX prodom, or however you want to call it. Like those three things were my like catalysts. Obviously Road Fools 7 and Road Fools 9, like the Cielencki show, and like there's just these moments that really kind of propelled me. I would say it only happened because Kink is in Rochester, and I was in like a city over an hour away, and just like I had started meeting those guys. I knew a bunch of the Rochester guys, and I never met Zach for the longest time, but I met Greg Walsh, who was working for Kink. I don't know exactly. He was working at a shop called Hardpacked, and then he started working at Kink, or I don't know if he was doing both at the same time, but we became friends, and he somehow just, Greg, if you know Greg is like a motivator, and he's like progressive in the sense he's going to push, or he sees talent, or he sees things and he's going to try to make it like bigger.
Okay.
And like give it opportunity. I don't know if that's the best word, but he saw some stuff in me, and ultimately, like, they flowed me a frame, and just it was weird because it started to happen, and then he got the offer at Primo to Plus, and he moved to California like right at the start, and I was like, oh, all right, I guess we're like, didn't quite, like, I knew Zach, but Zach is Zach. That's that. And so, but the motivator and the drive was Greg at Kink early, from at the period of time he was there. Like Greg had ideas and he wanted to do those, and he got me involved, or he got me sponsored, and ended up doing a bunch of ads. And I guess what happened, they did the tour, the Kink tour, in like June of the Revolution in like 2000, like June of 2000.
Okay.
And like Nate Hansen's on it, Dave Young, Rob Tibbs, who else? Ryan Scher, Ariaga wasn't on the tour at the time. Jimmy Buckins was there, and so once that kind of happened, and then one of the big catalysts was like Ryan Scher moving. He moved to San Diego for a minute, and then moved. He ended up staying on my couch for a long time. But he and I would go to Rochester and kind of bombard Zach with ideas.
Oh, nice.
And that's where like the Freebird came. We because Kink was like this, because the 90s was like you build things overweight. That was like the only, this is how we make a strong bike. And then when we started at Kink, we're like, I was never really an overweight bike guy.
Mm-hmm.
I did ride the Empire, but that's all I had, and then we were all pushing because I didn't want like the thought was like the reason why you don't break the stuff is because you can't lift it. Yeah,
right.
And so there has to be a happy middle ground of like, all right, how much can we take away without it being like totally weak?
Mm-hmm.
And so Ryan and I, along with like other guys on the team, were feeling it too. And we were kind of pushing for like a lighter weight, and that was like the transformation of Kink in a sense.
Nice. So your signature frame with Kink being a little lighter was something that was like a conscious thing that you guys were trying to make happen.
Oh, totally. Like the Freebird came out first. They were all made because Kink was all American made at that point.
Yeah.
And Brew, which is Blue Ridge Electric Welding, out of Boone, North Carolina. Like Steve's still around. It's awesome. He's still doing stuff. But we did the Freebird. Ryan's frame was first, and then I did mine ultimately. And Steve was like, he knew that I was like, I want to do.
It's a Freebird.
Okay.
Kevin Zuba just sent me this picture while we're talking of your Freebird. So keep going here.
Freebird was awesome. That was like, I could tell you alternate names for it and all this, but I did the drawings on like paper.
It's nice.
So I drew those. I drew mine, and then like Steve at Brew was like, we were just kind of going back and forth, and he knew that I was like I wanted lighter and lighter frames, and so we were talking about butted tubing, and then it was like mine and Rick Moliterno's was the first to do like an English bottom bracket. Like Yeah, and then what else did we do? I don't even think we did. I can't even remember. I got the frame upstairs somewhere, or downstairs, but like, yeah, it was fun to, Steve really kind of pushed it, or he said we could do this. He proposed ideas, and I was like, all right, let's just do it. Let's just see how light we can get it. And like the first day I put it together, the bike was under 30 pounds, which I'd never ridden.
Wow, how gross. So what period of time, like what year would this been?
That would have been 2002.
Wow, man, how crazy.
Yeah, it was wild. Like Ruben's frame came out, and that was along the same lines of like the light, like we're kind of reject the heavy frames. Let's go towards light, because the more, I'm not saying I'm the greatest skill, but I think the more skill you get, the less you need the burly frames.
Right.
Like I never was like a bike thrower. I didn't like to drop my bike out of a trick. A lot of times I'd go down with the ship.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I kind of come from this like broke ass era of things where like, oh, this is money. I gotta spend money on new parts if I just throw my bike.
I get that totally. It's just being conscious of like, oh, if I just let this thing get destroyed, it costs money when I could hang on to it and it not get destroyed.
Yeah. So it was kind of that idea of like, but it was a wild time of like, like just re-exam, like going through everyone's, like every part on your bike and going, all right, what can we make lighter? Where do we not need weight?
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. Was like if you look if you look at old bike checks from that era, the 2000s, they always had a section about like modifications, like what did you do to your bike?
Yep.
What did you do to make it kind of uniquely yours? And everyone would have something. A lot of people were like doing weight things, like you'd cut the seat post tube,
Mm-hmm.
and you do all these things. And I don't know. Do people have that anymore? Like I
I
swear, all the modifications became normal.
Yeah, okay, so my perspective on this, where we are today in BMX, is that it's kind of been like a wave of like it got whichever way you want heavy and light to go, it got overbuilt because things were too weak and breaking all the time, and they didn't want that anymore, so they just built things as strong and as much metal as they could so that they didn't deal with it breaking. And then it went downhill and it got lighter again until it
Like
got,
the Grim Reaper frames are
yeah,
these ultra light, like
that's the opposite end of the spectrum where it got too light. And it sounds like kind of your frame and Ruben's frame is the beginning of that crest that
yeah.
starts it going down.
Probably Rick's frame too, but I don't think standard was as strong as it was. It wasn't a McNeil. It wasn't a like Kink at the time. But yeah, that was like the start of like, let's look another direction.
It's really interesting to hear. So budded tubing wasn't really a thing before that?
No, because it was expensive and like
Um,
like it didn't really. I think because you always hear about people talk about using like Reynolds tubing, Reynolds budded
mm-hmm.
tubing, and like you think about like the price of a frame. Now that it has stayed the same, but it hasn't like if you think about like the audience for BMX, right? The
Mm-hmm.
cost has to fit a certain range, and the people
Yeah.
that buy it don't. It's usually like parents and kids, and it's not like mountain bikes or road bikes that have like doctors who buy frames and people are willing to drop 10,000.
Right.
So you don't, and you get this rejection like chromoly is the thing. Like you wouldn't use a titanium, you wouldn't use aluminum, so like the costs, you don't really have a lot of room to do really innovative stuff because then it changes the price.
Absolutely. I mean, I did a video in 2020 where I compared a 2007 Ride BMX buyer's guide and I compared the prices
Uh-huh.
to current day, and there was a couple like standard and S&M, but standard had the exact same frame because they've been doing the 250L and those frames for literally ever. So it was like I could compare the differences in prices from 13 years previously, and there was a couple different things, even a couple handlebars that like the slam bars that they
Mhm.
still made, the prices on them were barely moved in those 13 years. I think now with everything going on, prices have gone up a little bit, but everything you're saying is definitely,
I wonder
yeah.
if you could actually like see if that fits with like the change in the dollar or
Oh yeah.
like did they actually stay up or did it is that a realistic change or is it just artificially low
Mm-hmm.
or what like
Yeah, and I mean, you could even throw in shipping price graphs and material costs and things of that nature and find out like how it follows that. And I think just in the past year and a half, 2 years, frames have gotten to a point where they're like definitely considerably more expensive than they were way back then, where you compare them and you're like, oh, okay, there is a big difference now.
yeah it's definitely hard because you're like if you're a brand you got a price within like this frame probably competes with this frame and
Mm,
is it like what do you have on it and does it warrant other costs like
yeah.
higher costs?
Well, that and you got to make enough money to stay in business too.
Yeah, you got to stay in business. You got to fund your team, and
Hmm.
it's not like the full price of the frame that's funding your team. It's just a little bit where you make some profit, and you have to fund your team and fund your employees and all that stuff.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
wild.
challenge, man.
So at what point in all of what we were talking about with the frames and kink and stuff did Odyssey happen?
That was 2001. What happened was 2000 or 2001, somewhere in there. Jimmy Buckins and Brian Schur went to Interbike.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it's probably 2000 because they were out there at the time. So they went to Interbike, and they had apparently stopped into the booth and started talking to those guys. And they had an Odyssey I'm guess it would have to be Chris. They spoke to Chris Katsonis, and he was saying how that they were changing things and they have all these ideas, and he probably explained some of the products and that, and we could get whatever we wanted from Odyssey. And so when they came back, they eventually showed up in Buffalo and told me this. I was like, okay, that's cool. Odyssey was not Odyssey it is today, right?
Yeah.
They had a lot of like not so innovative and older part ideas, and nothing was like, especially like moving in the direction we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I ended up getting a gyro and some like race rims at first.
Nice.
And I ended up breaking the race rims, but they were like, listen, like the Hulu, or not the Hulu, I guess, pretty much, Jesus. What's the, oh my God.
Hazard?
Sorry. Yeah, they used Hazard, right? The Hazard, they were like, the Hazard's coming, and it's not ready yet, but it's coming, right? And ultimately, I got like Earth Science tires and Hazard rims, and eventually the Hazard rims came. But what was cool about Chris was that he was from Rochester.
Oh, nice.
Right? Like you find comfort in the people that you could relate to better.
Yeah.
And so I was speaking to him, I could like, oh, he's not BSing me. He doesn't sound like a sales guy, and he's like, he knows what he's talking about. I could tell. And then obviously he's from Rochester, so that helped. And he wasn't lying, because when we got the new stuff, or we finally got stuff when it came, which wasn't too long, I was like, oh, all right, they're like, they're on it. Like,
yeah.
This is what you dream of. You're like, finally, like, as somebody who, the cool thing, Kink was great. They were doing the things, but they had their limitations, right?
Mm-hmm.
It had to be like CNC'd and it was American made. Nothing against American made, but Odyssey was made in Taiwan, and they had different, tooling abilities.
Oh, okay.
And they were making more complicated parts than like a sprocket and like a stem, and so like, because Kink wasn't making rims at the time, and that's a whole different animal. And Odyssey was. Kink wasn't doing tires. Odyssey was. So it obviously worked being, a frame sponsor and a part sponsor.
Right.
But it was awesome. Like, just they brought on Jim Bauer and then Nuno, and it was just like, oh, this is really good. I really lucked out being here.
Yeah, no doubt. Being there before all of that is cool.
Yeah, like how many times you get like somebody tells you something and it's not even close to being true, or it's 30% true.
Right, or it's 6 years later and it's like, oh yeah, that's coming out from a different company now, and it's like,
yeah, where Odyssey was like 100%, like the whole way, for me anyway, from my experience.
That's really cool, and it's pretty wild to think about how much the geography of where you're from impacted your entire BMX career.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, because you growing up and seeing the magazines, everything was California. Like, what was inspiring was seeing like the plywood hoods, like Kevin Jones, Mark Eaton, Brett Down, and Mark Eaton, and watching their videos was like, I connected to them because they were York, PA, and like, where the hell is Buffalo, New York? Well, where the hell is York, PA?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And be like, oh, okay, they're in the middle of nowhere too, and they were the most progressive riders, and that was really, really awesome. And like, you can, and then Ohio guys like Chris Young and Sean Bloom and like all those guys kind of connected. I remember going to York and meeting all those guys, and like, oh, there is a scene, thank God.
Yeah.
Like, you started in 2006, but in 1991, nobody rode.
I wasn't even born yet in 1991.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
man. Okay. That's what it held.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
No,
didn't.
I would say how about this? There was a summer in like 88, 87, 87, 88 where I remember going to this one neighborhood and there was 50 kids with BMX bikes. It was like the heyday of like glory. I was like, oh my God, look at this bike. And everyone had these crazy colored bikes and mags and all this stuff. And then 2 years later, there was like me. It was like me. It's
Wow.
like me and a few random people. And yeah, it's just like the sport was dead in 1991. So just seeing the plywood hoods and being able to go down there and ride with them. And then like I used to go to Cleveland, go to the Berea Triangle, if that's the right, how do you say Berea or Berea?
Oh, Berea. Yeah.
Berea,
I
yeah.
think. I mean, I'm an hour south of that area, so I could be wrong.
I've never been able to figure it out.
I think it's Berea, but I'm not positive.
They had a skate park called the Berea Triangle that was like, it was the first place I learned double peg grinds.
Wow.
And like I learned double peg stalls, but like just never had the ramps. And they had this like super steep, like probably 6-foot ramp and like fatter coping. And I was like, okay, I'm doing it. And like learned it. And I was like, oh man, this is great. I feel like I'm progressing.
Wow, man, I had no idea. So was this outdoor or indoor park?
No, it was a roller rink.
Oh, nice.
They had a vert ramp that was like maybe 6-foot clearance. So we didn't really mess with the vert ramp, but they had like fly out jumps, and you could like kind of, like 2 vert walls, right? One here, and then a quarter pipe in the middle with a deck, and you could launch to the wall and down to the vert wall.
Right.
And like that's probably where I learned to like ride vert walls. I still love a vert wall to this day.
Wow. So what else does a skate park have? What does an indoor skate park look like in the 90s?
It is piecemeal. Like it is a piece over here, it is a piece over here. They had like probably a 4-foot quarter that was almost a vert with parking blocks on top.
Nice.
And then there was a wedge, there was like fly out. Like it was, do you ever see old Rampage footage?
Some, yeah, here and there.
There's, if you look at there, sometimes there's like pieces, there's a lot of space between things, and there's not cool. They had mini ramp in the corner that I learned peg grinds on. Opposite end was the vert ramp, and in the middle was really nothing. It was just like a quarter pipe with a big deck you could fly out and do tricks on. I landed my first tail up there.
Wow.
I landed a tail up there. That was like pretty random.
That's so cool. So they hadn't figured flow out yet.
No, that didn't. I would say that wouldn't have came in until probably like, honestly, like the Wessel thing, like the Chenga, the idea of the rhythm.
Yeah, the wooden rhythm.
Connect things.
Man, so
I don't know if I would fully say that, but it definitely became like the place has got to flow. It's got to be, you got to be able to connect places.
Right. Well, I mean, just thinking about the origins of, people hitting fly out dirt jumps just to a flat top and then evolving from that into what is trails and becomes a dirt jump. It's like, it sounds like it's a similar thing. I wonder if the timelines line up where as people start to figure out, oh, you can connect jumps together. Oh, maybe we can connect skate park stuff together.
I would agree with that. I think like mid 90s, 95 is when I would say like trail thing really, I mean, in my world anyway, it took off.
Yeah.
I remember going down, we had Union Trail. Have you ever been to Union Trails?
I haven't. The one time I was supposed to go there for a jam that they had, the weather got bad and it didn't happen.
Yeah, so my friend Al those trails go back to the late 80s at least.
No way. Are those the oldest trails?
Yeah, they're they're old. Because I worked at this place called Right Way, which was the GT distributor of like East Coast, Northeast.
Okay.
And they were only like a few miles from there. And this guy, Craig Bulis, he had a picture of the trails or him going around the one berm that's still there today. And I was like, where's that? What was that? And he told me, and I was like, okay. So I went down there, and they were nothing like they are today.
Right.
Nothing. It was like, again, like the skate park from that era. It's the same thing. It's just because they hadn't seen Racer or they hadn't seen Rhythm. in the rhythm. I don't know when the invention of rhythm happened, but I would say 95. I met my friend Al, and he had worked at, he was either, yeah, he was working at Right Way, I believe. And he had said, oh, they've been working on the trails. I was like, okay, all right. Well, I don't know what you're working on because I don't know. I didn't understand
Didn't
rhythm.
know what trails were yet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember seeing something about sheep hills. Or I think it was probably Todd Lyons going through rhythm or something, and then going to Union and seeing the original set. That's the name of it, and had like, I mean, each jump was maybe 1 to 2 feet, but it was rhythm, no
Yeah.
pedaling, and I remember being like, oh, this is different, and
No
just
way.
the trail bug just bit, and you had a scene. You had like a lot of local kids. My friend Al was there all the time, and then some couple, just dude Richie from Long Island, and just 7-Eleven was going, and Posh and Push, and so those are all like lore and people that was inspiring, and you made your own trails, and we dug and dug and dug and dug, and then I think exactly Wessel wanted to create rhythm.
Yeah.
I think didn't he do something at Woodward first,
I'm not
or
positive.
maybe it was Chenga, but I don't know, whatever. But either way, Wessel probably took that trails were so popular, and he was probably like, let's just make wooden rhythm.
Yeah.
And Chenga just blew up because that's exactly what it was. And you're like, this is great.
Dude, we just had a conversation at Ray's the other day about how had Wessel have been born in a couple years earlier or a couple years later, BMX might be completely different today.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy crap, that's kind of crazy because he's responsible for, the wooden rhythm and what drew people to Changa. And if it weren't for that, I mean, the flow would have still been here in Ohio. It's crazy that I need to just talk to Wessel so that we could do that conversation. But it's like crazy to think about that.
Yeah. I mean, if he didn't do it, not that it would have been done the same way. Maybe somebody else would have done it, but he did it, and it like took over.
Right.
Because it was like, oh, I really just got to have a wooden rhythm.
Mm-hmm. That's so. Man, I didn't realize that Union was there for that long.
Yeah, it's crazy. I went to Lollapalooza with my friend Jason in '93, and then we came home the next day and rode those trails.
Dude.
I mean, it was a tabletop and a jump and whatever, but it was not what it was. But the trails, people riding bikes down there has been, I would say, late '80s.
That's
They've been
amazing.
there forever.
That's so amazing.
That's over 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, so my local trails started around 97 or a couple years before that because somebody was down there digging a dirt half pipe to skate in with a dirt board, and then the guy who owns them now went down there and all his buddies saw it and they started digging down there, and then just like you're saying, I mean, it was all downhill from there. And I'm assuming they saw the magazines and saw people hitting dirt jumps, and it wasn't. Yeah, this is so cool.
Yeah, just people. I imagine the '80s kids wanted a racetrack,
Mm-hmm.
and probably some dirt jumps in a way, but like, we didn't. I don't know. The '80s didn't have landings. I guess it probably was just a one jump. And, I don't know. But then, yeah, it just kind of morphed, and every generation of kids have went down there because it's like a place. Knock on wood, it's a safe place to ultimately ride. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's amazing. It's cool to go down. I've gone down there just secretly, or like just been in the background and kind of walk through, and like nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people would probably know now if I walk through, but I think at the time I couldn't really announce. I just kind of wanted to take it in.
Yeah.
Watch like this generation of rider, like what they do and how they build it and maintain it, and
It's cool.
The place is great.
It's cool there's still a scene there. There's been a scene at these same Union trails in Buffalo, New York since the 80s.
Yeah.
How-
Yeah. It blows my mind. I remember just seeing them, be like, what is that?
Wow.
And just, yeah, it's definitely ever since like '94 or '95. I don't know when Al officially started building down there, but Yeah.
Shout out to that guy.
Yeah. Al Williams.
Wow. So, uh, we're gonna go back to Odyssey here
Okay.
because Kevin also sent me a picture of the letter that came with these pedals, and
Okay.
I'm just curious, kind of the story behind the pedals themselves. You know, the idea behind them and all that kind of thing.
Um. Like, so Odyssey again was very receptive to
Yeah.
ideas, and I think they would have, if it was a kooky idea, or if they would have filled, if there was something wrong, they would have like called it out or said no, that wouldn't work or whatever. But I think so I was Greg Walsh was at Primo, and he was sending me Primo pedals, and that was awesome. And it's not that it didn't last, but I was wondering, because I was trying to like pedal grind, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
grind and pedal ice and crank slide and lucky grind, and it's like there were metal pedals, right? They're metal pedals. It's not plastic, so you would grind and you would stick.
Yeah.
Like the pins would grab onto something, and you're like, oh, how the hell? Like I would pull the pins out on one side or something like that, or eventually the pins would pop out, and you're like, all right, there has to be a better way, right? And obviously, being part of Odyssey, I was like, can we do a pedal? Because they were doing like the Southgate pedal, which was like this. It was flat, I believe, or it had very mellow concave, and so it was a little blocky, and it was overweight, right? It was this kind of like, and it didn't lock into things very well. And I was like, can we, like, can we do something? I need a pedal that I can take the pins out easily, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take the pins out easily. In actuality, it was supposed to have a grind plate on it.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Like the screws that stick up that your feet, they would actually screw into a grind plate and hold it, and so the one side would be smooth, and that side would be heavier,
Mm-hmm.
and so that you would always have the pin side up. Pin
Yeah.
side up would be lighter. And so that was the original idea. I almost lost you there.
Oh.
That was the original idea, but we were doing it. We're kind of playing with it. Like I remember, the Christmas is always like a great time in my memory, because Chris is from Rochester, and he was living in California, and he would, this is Chris from Odyssey, he would go back for the holidays, and he'd always bring drawings.
Ah, he's coming back to Rochester, and you're seeing him. Okay.
Family, and I would, I would look at, how do I say it, he would have drawings. I saw the first 3D models of the drawing. This is like on paper, using the Form Z or something was what he used, and we had the plates and all that stuff, and we're going through the ideas and like things to solve, like the spindles. I think spindles on the Primos would break because it tapers and it gets shorter in the end, and it would break there. So we had to solve that problem, and like the pins came from underneath. So because if you had a bolt, like an Allen key, and screwed in from the top, as soon as you grind it, you would screw the head off. You could never get them out. So we did it from underneath, and then we added like a concave, and there was no middle pin. And so your coping would ultimately lock into that point, was the idea.
Okay, yeah.
And then we were talking about the plate idea, and eventually it was just like, let's just not do it. It's just going to be a hassle, and if it was flat, it would be perfect, but it was concave and just became a problem to make.
Right.
Just do it the regular way, and so the pedals went crazy. It was amazing.
So it's cool to hear that. I mean, the pedal spawned out of engineering the solution to a problem that you were having in your own riding. And so were there other pedals out there that were like, was that the first thing that really solved that problem out there?
I think it was the first purposeful pedal towards grinding.
Yeah.
Like I would say I was trying to solve a problem. I was trying to make tricks possible.
Yeah.
Right? And this idea that, like, all right, I still want pins on it, but I want to be able to grind it in certain ways. Let's see how much drag we can reduce. Because again, like imagine if you do like a lucky grind with a pin stick, especially on
I
like
can't do lucky grinds because of my pedals. Yeah.
yeah okay so yeah they like stick and then you go over the bars. It's not like a plastic pedal,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so it was like I still want these things, and the idea of using a plastic pedal wasn't acceptable, or wasn't even like you didn't think it was possible at the time. And so let's modify this other pedal. Let's make it so we can grind. And that's what I was like. I want to do lucky grinds, and I really want to do lucky grinds. That was like to me like the coolest trick.
Yeah. Oh, there's such a rad trick. For
Yeah,
sure.
and just you would stick in wood, and you would stick everywhere, and it was so like you're like I don't know what's gonna happen.
Just
You're
rolling
like
the
all right,
dice.
let's pray and see what happens.
Yeah, and then
We were going for.
I love that concept of it's not just like creating a part for the sake of, oh, Jim's gonna have signature pedals now. It's like he wants to ride a certain way and he wants a part that enables him to do that easier and better, and that
Makes tricks possible. Yeah.
it's just awesome. I think that's, I mean, the OG PCs, JCPCs, those are still around today. And I
Yeah.
think it's because of the fact that so much thought went into those pedals and made them as good as they are.
Yeah, I think what's cool about those, like, yeah, the more you tighten the pins, right? They like clamp down on how much the the pedal rotates.
Oh, okay.
So you could take all the pins out on one side, tighten it down, and it won't rotate.
Yeah.
And like, so then you could take your feet off the pedals, do tricks, and your pedals are still upright,
Yeah.
and you don't land on the slippery side.
Huh. So at what point did the plastic version, like, how long had the metal ones existed?
Well, the metal ones came out in say 2003,
Okay.
and I would say I think they had a long run. I would say 3 to 4 years. And then Animal did their version of it with the Hamilton pedal,
Yeah.
right? But then I think they did the plastic as well,
Yeah, they had a Hamilton plastic pedal after
which
that.
which really ushered in. I know, like, I think the St. Louis guys were the first ones to use plastic pedals. Like they were using the Odyssey ones
Mm-hmm.
originally, and then I think the Hamilton ones, but that didn't catch on, right? I think the Hamilton ones, when he was riding the plastic, or they had the plastic, that really, lit the fire. Like, because Corey Martinez and Nathan Williams did like Lucky 180 on cement, and there's no way you could do that with a metal pedal.
Oh man, I can imagine being a person riding and not knowing plastic pedals existed and seeing that and be like, how did they do it?
Yeah, you're like what? And like obviously a lot of wax maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
but like once the like they did 180, and then that made it like possible. Like people
Right.
saw it and they're like, oh, plastic pedals, that makes sense that would slide. And then it was like, okay, ultimately the original pedal like was like, all right, this is not it. And George French and Chris all like they conceive like the JCPC OGPC, right? The idea of like, because we were trying to solve problems, like the problem with the regular pedal with bearings is that, again, if you take the pins all out on one side, it rotates
Mm-hmm.
because the weights are different,
Yeah.
and it's not the side you want up. So they, created this idea, this mechanism where it clamps, right?
Yeah.
It has no bearings.
Right.
Has no bearings, and the spindle can be stronger.
That's
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's great. It's
it's
basically still going.
it's crazy to think about the fact that the pedals being two halves is because they didn't want them to spin.
Yeah.
When you look at them today, you're like, oh, it makes sense. You replace the halves and you got new pedals again. And in reality, it's like, oh no, we just didn't want them to spin, so they.
Like they still spin, right? It wasn't like it was totally locked, but like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another one of those things. It's just like, man, I never would have guessed that is what the utility of that is, but it's a engineered solution to something in BMX, and it's so rad.
Yeah, you're like, how do we solve this issue? And like, there's a traditional, you use bearings, and can we get away from that? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a cool thing where you like can you ask yourself, like, can we do without this? And
Mm-hmm.
you never would have done it because you thought that was like a thing that you needed. And you said, well, let's see, is there a way to do without it? Well,
That's,
so,
I mean, that's engineering at its finest. Have
yeah,
you?
those guys are great. Like George French is an engineer, so
Yeah. Before we stop talking about the OG, like the metal ones, I gotta shout out Matt, because Matt is like obsessed with those. Matt O'Connell from Buffalo.
yeah, yeah.
His
I was
obsession.
so amazed. I was like, oh my god, you're riding these? That's great.
I got a set of the guacamole ones. I meant to get them out so I
Really?
could. Yeah, I rode them. I had them on my bike. I wanted those pedals. But have you seen the stuff that Zach Gerber has done with 3D printing and making like grind sides to those and making
Yeah,
thick?
yeah. It's pretty awesome.
That's another one of those engineering things, and just taking what was there and looking at the utility of it and just like DIYing it to what suits their needs.
Yeah, I think that's what's beautiful about BMX. Yeah, they're like maybe like that lower cost, like the prices aren't that high, that it still allows people to DIY stuff,
Mm-hmm.
to make a solution.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was like millions of dollars, like if it was a frame was $10,000, you'd be like, people could spend a lot of money and you might not compete. But with Zach doing that is literally like what it was like in the 90s when like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the part I need. I got to make it. I think that's like how Kink started. It started making like axles. Like,
Huh.
people don't, I mean, most people these days probably don't realize your axles would break.
Yeah.
Like the bolts were wrong. They were tiny axles, and they wouldn't stand up. The dropouts were weak, and they would snap your axles all the time, and you can never get good ones. And Zach, well, I think with the help of Jimmy Rathbun, ultimately they made preheated axles, or treated. I'm blanking. Yeah, made it
Heat-treated?
heat-treated axles. Well, I'm pressure treated. It's not lumber.
It's
But
okay.
heat-treated axles, and it just kind of started from there.
Yeah.
And that's the same kind of move.
Yeah, I've seen like the stuff that Zach's got going on with that 3D printing and just talking about it. It's like that is the future of making things, in that you just literally make it right in front of you,
Yeah.
rather than, oh, if we're going to do this pedal, yeah, like rapid prototyping existed before, but now this is like mega rapid prototyping already in your office. If you have somebody who can do it, you've got a testable product today.
Yeah. Yeah. I think George did some parts for Odyssey. Like we did I think it was like a sprocket car. What was that? We did something like it blew up. This was 10 years ago or more,
Mm-hmm.
but it did not last. What was it? A sprocket car? I don't know. He did something like 3D printed and definitely didn't work, but obviously times have changed a lot.
Yeah.
So 3D printing is far better.
Yeah.
Imagine you could 3D print a bike or your parts or your shoes, right? Like,
Yeah.
and make it, and you just make it yourself. You're not buying a shoe anymore. You're buying something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, Zach fully believes that's like the future, where people are just going to have 3D printers in their house, and when they need something, they're just going to get the file from online and print it, and now they have it. Makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, and just to put a cap on that too, is like the future possibilities of that for companies is like people could pay a I don't know if it's a subscription, or they see a company has a design and they put it out there like, oh, we could put out the file for this and sell it to people to be able to print their stuff at home. And I don't know, it's just cool.
Yeah, maybe you buy the upgrades and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you license the new version. Maybe it's like an app. You gotta their purchase. What do they call it?
In-app purchase. Yeah.
This right, stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, it's just a cool thing to think about. But where this leads me in the conversation because I feel like, I mean, sometime at this point, Sunday starts to come into this conversation time wise.
Yeah, Sunday was 2005. Um, it was actually Christmas 2004.
Okay.
Where, again, like I talk about these trips to Rochester to visit Chris, and we met at Starbucks on Monroe Ave. I think it's Monroe Ave.
Okay.
And so we just kind of talking, and just kind of expressed, maybe frustrations with Kink at the time. Maybe just the limitations of what's possible, and also again, like, they just had far more access to machining and equipment than like Kink did.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was like, oh well, we could do this, and it wasn't even. I was just like, we just kind of came up with the idea. Could we do a bike company? But like, obviously, I'd have to leave Kink. That's fine, whatever. And it was just like, oh, wait a minute. All right, let's see if we can do it. And literally, like 4 months later, so that was December 2004, and then April 1st, whatever you do not start a bike company and launch it on April 1st.
Why not?
Nobody will believe you in 7 days. Yeah, so yeah, we didn't announce we didn't have the frame. We just had bars and forks, which were ultimately modified. Morning forks were like modified, the race forks or the Odyssey forks, and then the bars were like, we did basically like slam rip off the 8-inch bar, and then we did like 2 other bars because bars were real short at the time.
Okay.
And then I don't know, I think we had the prototype frame by the summer or fall.
Okay. So what was your like official role in all of that?
I was like, I wore many hats in a way. Like, I was like, I don't know what I was like. I was a rider. I was like a head of it, or like the figurehead, in a sense. I was doing sales in the beginning. Because there was like the separation of Sunday from Odyssey, because there was this fear, right? Because Odyssey is a parts company, and they have a team full of riders that have frame company sponsors.
Yeah.
And ultimately, does another frame company want to promote, or do they want their rider on Odyssey to promote? Ultimately, that they sort of promote Sunday, to promote a competitor. And so there was the separation of Sunday and Odyssey. And so I was doing international sales and some design. George and Chris and everyone, we did the frames all together. What else? And just team stuff. And then ultimately, I moved to Austin in 2009 to do it like full time.
Yeah.
I was doing it from Buffalo. Odyssey was moving their design per se to Austin. The design side, so Chris and then Ben Ward was there at the time. They moved to Austin. I moved to Austin, and then was going to basically do Sunday kind of full time. Like I had a retail store at the time. I sold that in 2008, and then I moved to Austin, and then went full time. And it really like was just doing so many pieces to it.
Yeah.
Like shooting videos and filming and editing and website and like the Shopify accounts and managing tours and picking team riders and oh my god, yeah. So just wait.
I mean, at the beginning of anything like that, I feel like there can only be a few people usually involved, and those few people are wearing all the hats.
Yeah. And you're like, it's tough and not easy. So
yeah. So at that point, I mean, what was kind of the inspiration for the first frame? Like, was it another of those engineering things where you guys were trying to accomplish something, or?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely, because like they had seen problems that they were like, because they were a parts company, they weren't making frames. They're like, oh, we know we can do this better. We can do like a simple thing, like, so the Euro bottom bracket went out,
Okay.
right? Because ultimately people can't figure out how to screw things in, and,
Yeah.
and it's fair. They
Yeah.
don't, but ultimately, like, FBM and S&M, I'm pretty sure those two were like, there was like a big meeting at one of the trade shows in in Binghamton. Like, FBM was doing their own interbike trade show, and I think there was a big meeting there about the bottom bracket. About what are we going to do? How are we going to standardize it? And ultimately, then there was the American bottom bracket and the Spanish bottom bracket competing.
Yeah.
And I think all the American companies went, American bottom bracket, or they went American. They just took the bearings to do the press fit.
Yeah.
So that had taken over. But what happens is when you weld the frame, your tube that was originally round now is oval.
Yep.
Right. And so our frames, you actually went, and they still do it today, I believe. They went back in after it was welded and straightened it out, right? So it's perfectly round and you can get it in. We did like angled brake mounts. That's what we do. We did we had our own design butting in the tubes. Like, here's the drawings that we want.
Yeah.
What else we do? Oh, the hollow dropouts. Like, nobody had done hollow dropouts at that point.
Really? That was that early?
Oh yeah, 2005 or 2006 is when the first frame came out, I would say. But yeah, I think Clay Dog Bikes has the purple frames. But yeah, those are the original prototypes with the hollow dropouts. Those are the first hollow dropouts.
That's pretty cool. So, when did waved tubing become a thing? Was it in the first one too?
No, that was not in the first. It was the next year.
Okay.
So we had shrunk kept everything except for, I think we shrunk the size of the down tubes, or the down tube and top tubes, because they were a little bigger.
Yeah.
Right, and then added the wave tubing because you can you don't need the size as much anymore. Now you could add the waves, and that adds the rigidity. That came out. We only did it on the down tube. We didn't do top tube at that point. That was a few years later. So that was we launched that. Yeah, right. Yeah, we launched that with Ian's frame.
Oh, okay.
His frame with the the pivot post in that first. A lot of it's going back, so hopefully I'm remembering correctly. But launched it with his white frame.
Okay.
With that, and then released the second wave. First wave? Oh shit! Sorry, I got it all mixed up. It was the new wave, which was called the first wave, and that was wow, I'm off. Sorry, I apparently battling COVID. I was telling you earlier.
Yeah, no, it's
battling brain fog from it, but
it was a long time ago. It's okay.
Yeah, but it was the toothpaste, the latte, and the creamsicle. That was the first wave frame, and then we did the second wave with Ian's frame. So.
Yeah, the wave tubing, I mean, I'm a fan of that. I've been riding the Soundwave for 7 years. So.
Yeah, you've been riding for a while on them.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I wholeheartedly have ridden that frame because I feel like it's one of the strongest frames you can get out there. But
have you noticed denting at all, or what?
I put a couple dents in it, but it's the kind of thing where had I not had the wave tubing, it would have been probably new frame kind of deal.
Yeah, because that's it. That was the thing. Imagine you spend all your money on the frame, and then all of a sudden you put a dent in it, and then ultimately it cracks, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And I was like, you just spent a lot of money. You want it to last.
Right. It's pretty sweet to hear that you guys were just. I mean, it feels like every decision is fueled by a need for something.
Yeah, I would say yeah. I mean, obviously, technology and features kind of runs out at times.
Yeah.
You run up against the wall of limitations of funding, and even BMX style or what they want. You think about I still love the elementary stem.
I have one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I love once I got it figured out, it was perfect. You got to grease all the bolts. I used to be able to travel well with it and all that stuff, and it kind of taught me to not worry about bar position. I used to be like handle it or just be like, oh, it's gotta be the perfect spot and kind of like throw me off mentally. But with that, it was just like, I'll figure it out. I can deal with it. And that was a cool thing to get over.
That's funny.
But then ultimately bars went up and you wanted like the stem to raise it up. So it was like, we've been back to this like, not archaic model, but it's like the simplest, basic, just clamp it down model. It's been going forever, which that may just be the thing that works. But
yeah. I mean, Odyssey's definitely tried a lot of different things. I mean, there was the one stem that hinged.
Oh, that was a cool stem. I like that.
That's a cool concept for sure.
I love that one. That was like
the Lincoln stem, I think.
Yeah, Lincoln. It was like a little shorter. I needed it a little longer, but
yeah.
I like it.
So where does the Model C fit into all of this?
Like, how did it arise? Or
yeah, I'm curious.
That comes from probably Ben Ward.
Okay.
I remember going into the office and Chris, obviously Odyssey or Sunday, like they allowed it to happen, but I feel like Ben was pushing it, and Ben knows what's up. He's got a ton of like great ideas and all that stuff. So it's just like, and it made sense because up until that point, there had never been like a quote unquote freestyle 24. You think of these 24s and they're like race ones, long back end, the bars are really slammed, like
right.
It looks nothing like, and the bottom bracket's low, like nothing like a freestyle bike. Like nothing like that. But you haven't seen it the other way.
Yeah.
And so they had them made and put them together right after Interbike the one year, and it was just sort of like novelty of like, oh, well, can you do this on it? Can you do this? Because it was so new and so foreign. It wasn't foreign at all because every trick worked.
Yeah.
Like we went to, I forgot, he was like a real estate agent in LA, and he had this like 6-foot mini in his backyard, and we just rode that for hours. Like, oh, what about this? What about that? What about this? And just kind of going down the list of what's possible, right?
Yeah, most things were, I'm sure.
Yeah, like everything is possible.
And that's what you're riding now. Well, does it have I know about the frame. Does it have you don't have to say anything can't be said. Does it have a different name? I can't remember.
I know of, but
okay.
Maybe it does, but they haven't told me. So.
Either way, you've been on.
He says, what does it say? No, it says Model C on it, doesn't it?
I don't know. I know.
Look in the basement.
The concept. But how long have you ridden the 24?
I literally from 2008, when we first got them, I've been riding. Like, I have to go back and forth between the 20 and the 24 because some people like Bobby Parker, I don't know if he can still do it today, but he used to be able to go switch, ride the 20, and then 2 minutes later ride the 24 and be totally comfortable on it. And like, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So you would see me ride one or the other for extended periods of time, like 6 months on this and 26 months on that, and kind of go back and forth whenever I felt like I had a new idea, right? A trick idea, like, oh, all right, let me get back on the 20 and work on it. And then probably since 2014, I've always been on them. Now, probably like 2015 or 2016. And then I've been on the 24. It's just because I don't have a 20.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just moved too many times, and I had a friend who broke his bike and was just like, all right, this bike needs someone to ride it, so you get it, you take it.
Huh. So. Yeah, I mean, you seem perfectly content and comfortable on the 24 anytime you post something.
Yeah, it's fun, and like I like to run, and I just don't like being injured after a long time of bike riding and being fine with like limping. That I'm just like, but the beauty of the 24 is it's just more stable in the air.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, more stable. And like, I always talk about this idea of like, it was the rationalization of the 24 when it first came out. It's like, you know how like you learn to air a quarter pipe. Now, can I air a bigger quarter pipe?
Mm-hmm.
How about a bigger one? How about a tighter one? How about how one with the corner, one with it,
Yep.
And we never changed the bike. And the 24 is literally a 20. It's just bigger.
Yeah.
So I've ridden generally mostly everything. So like, why don't I change the bike and see what that does? So it's this like, do you ever listen to Andrew Huberman?
I know who he is. I've heard some stuff, but I haven't listened to a lot.
His podcast, or he's on the Nine Club. He does a episode with those guys.
Oh, I think I might have watched part of that.
And he talks about this like, and it makes complete sense. He talks about this like the levels of mastery.
Yeah.
Like there's 4 steps, and the first 3 is like, beginner, expert, master, and each one of those is those 3 steps. You're trying to like get rid of the unknown, and just try to reduce it so you have it like perfectly dialed and that. But like the 4th step, it's like the Mark Gonzalez of skateboarding.
Mm-hmm.
Like this idea of like, now you want to introduce unknowns. I'm using unknown is not the right word. You want to, uncertainty is the right word. You want to bring in uncertainty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you become, it's like virtuosity. And then not that I'm a master, but I think I've like achieved all I feel like I could do.
Yeah.
So now it's like, well, what else? Like, why don't I see if I could do it like this? Just changing it up, like, because I obviously can't compete with what's going on today. So. Those antics today.
Yeah, things are crazy.
Yeah, I had a funny. The moment I realized that I was probably at the end was when I'd go riding. I was on like a Tennessee trip with Garrett Reeves and Eric Lichtenberger, and they were like plotting those two together would plot out these moves. I was just like, that scares the shit out of me. Okay, I guess I'm probably done here.
That's funny.
I was like, damn, this the level they're on? All right, well, I guess I'm not on that level anymore. But it was pretty awesome to be like, all right, I guess the torch has passed the generations of.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like everybody has that moment of realization.
Yeah, but you're young.
Oh, I don't know if I've had that moment yet.
Okay,
I hope
good.
not.
I thought you were...
I've had a realization of like, I no longer care about trying to jump box jumps to flat anymore.
That's fair. That's a good realization.
But like, yeah.
But you got your own angle and like this not niche, but you kind of probably have a whole bunch of tricks that you haven't been able to do yet that you're like working towards.
There's a couple that there's one this summer that I put 4 days straight of sessions into where I tried nothing but that trick and only got like I should have almost pulled it 1 time.
Okay. How did you rationalize like, all right, I'll come back to it when I figure out some new move or some new element? Or
it was more or less, it was like, man, I'm tired of only doing this one thing every time I ride because I'm pretty obsessive when it comes to tricks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like easy for me to just set the camera up and try the same exact thing for 4 hours straight, then the next day 4 hours, then 3 days after that 4 more hours, and then it finally just got to a point where I was like, dude, I'm just done trying this for my entire session. I'm going to do something else, and 3 months from now I'll try it again, and hopefully it just happens.
You'd be surprised. Like, you probably processed it. Like the Huberman podcast or the Nine Club, he talks about that too. Like this going after it over and over and over again. Like if you give yourself a little time, you'd be surprised. Like your mind works it out.
Oh, dude, I am a full believer, and I don't know if, I hope you relate to this. I hope somebody else relates to this, but myself and Sponge are both the kind of people that will try a trick and then we won't try it again for 6 months, 2 years. Then we try it again and literally land it first try.
Yep.
having never landed it before, didn't even get close the first time, but then years or a certain amount of time pass, you just do it the very first time you try it. And that's happened to me and him
What do
so
you
many
think?
times.
Do you think it's the idea of like you've done so many other things that either you raise your skill level or or do you process it like when you first tried it, you're like, oh, that's impossible, or it felt impossible, but years later or whatever the time frame is, you've already learned a bunch about it and it's not as menacing.
I don't know
Or do you
because
go, I'll just try it, let's see what happens, and all of a sudden you do it.
I think it's partially that. It's also partially that, you tried it already once before, so you kind of understand the motion of it. And
Yeah.
then it goes from being this thing of, oh, it's this totally new thing that I've never tried before. I don't know if it'll work or not, to, oh, yeah, we'll just see if this works this one random time. And then, oh my, it worked.
Yeah, yeah. Because you already like, I always remember like when I was like really trying a trick, it was not so much like it was never so much I wanted to do the trick,
Mm-hmm.
but in those 50 tries, it was trying to understand it so I could replicate it at a later date.
Yeah.
Like if you could solve it and understand, oh, the trick is this.
Yep.
Once you figure out that trick or the trick of the trick, right? Then you like, oh, okay, now I can come back because I know what the trick is. I'll
Yep.
always remember the trick. It just takes a few tries to figure it, to try them again.
Yep, and I love to break things down that way, and you can feel yourself, and once you recognize it, you search for that moment of what you're talking about, of where you realize a certain body movement that you have to do in the trick, just using like an ice pick to over on a spine, for example. Like, you
Yeah,
feel your shoulder drop and you realize what you do, and until you have that aha moment, you have no idea. And then you realize, oh, I move my body this way and the trick does this, and then it works, and then you can just, you got
yeah.
it.
When I was doing the ice pick to fakie over the summer, I remember seeing like the first time I did it, obviously watching Joe Rich do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's this like where you land and the frame like actually like you come up, you land, and it kind of rotates just a little more, and then the pressure kind of brings it back, and
Mm-hmm.
then you go in. And I was like, that was the trick. I
Yep.
knew I had to land and go, but it didn't quite work. But I was like, all you gotta do is let's get it to pivot, and then wait, and as it starts to come back, use that momentum to do it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I mean, that was the way it was with like Ice 270s when I watched Drew Bazantzon's how-to video, and he kind of explains that exact thing of, you get to that point and then you pivot it and you bring it
yeah,
back. Uh, so let's try it. Is there a way that relates? Because I mean, you've done a lot of progressive rail tricks. Like, does that relate in that at all, or like how are you coming up, or how did you come up with these things?
I'm gonna keep coming back to the Huberman thing. Um, in his most recent podcast, he talks about it's about creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so here's this. I grew up a fan of Kevin Jones, Chase Gwynn, Marquis and Plywood Hoods and all that. And those guys were like hyper creative,
Yeah.
right? So that, and like Matt Hoffman and Miron, like they always had tricks. They always had new stuff. And that was like BMX, right? That was like, you're always pushing the boundaries. So in my head, it was always about like, what's new? What's next? What's
Mm-hmm.
like what could you do? And I was way into snowboarding at one point. I grew up skateboarding, and I lived with skaters, and so taking all those elements, kind of, it's funny. Like my hometown of Cheektowaga, New York, has no handrails.
Oh, nice.
Right? Like to be a handrail guy, no handrails in their hometown. I don't, it's kind of weird, right? But I think it was just finding an angle,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, no one's doing this. I mean, I could. This is an area where I could like. There was like room to create tricks
Yeah.
in a sense, and but there was a period of time, I think the most creative was like that 2001 was like Ryan Show staying at my house. I, I was, I used to like go to sleep, but instead of sleeping for the first 2 hours, I would just kind of let my mind wander.
Mm.
And it wasn't like a judgment thing, and just let whatever idea comes in. I would just be so wired, and so I couldn't sleep. But I definitely was like, kind of come up with ideas from there.
I think that's called meditating.
Yeah, it's they because you've been talking about like divergent and convergent thinking.
Mm.
It's divergent thinking because you're like, your eyes are shut. It's like open something meditation. But yeah, it's letting everything come in.
Yeah,
And
you just
judging things.
you take your thoughts as they come and let them
And
go as they go.
yeah, but you're letting. It's not so much quite like that, but you're just not judging anything. You're listening, taking them in,
Mm-hmm.
but not judging, so that new ideas can be created. And like, it's like, you know how like there's an idea for anything, like the first idea is never the best. So you got to get through those
Mm-hmm.
bad ideas, and then the good ideas come, and that's sort of like that kind of same concept. One of my favorite moves was like, you'd go to a spot and say, all right, what is the obvious trick you can do here?
Yeah.
Now, what is the complete opposite of that here?
Yeah.
And it make you look around. You're like, all right, well, wait a minute, what about this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was kind of a neat like exercise to do.
Yeah. So when it comes to those progressive rail tricks, you were consciously like, you made a realization that like there's an area in BMX that it has room for new things to happen, and did you just like focus and take that time to put your energy towards that area, or
Yeah, definitely. Because you know what? I didn't have sub boxes. I didn't have mini ramps. I didn't have like giant wall rides. We didn't have skate parks here. Like, we didn't get a skate park till like 96.
mm-hmm.
And that was really bad. And like, just didn't, there's a lot of stuff we didn't have. So like anything, you're like, all right, this is what I do have.
Mm-hmm.
We had like Buffalo and Rochester had like the flat rails on the ground.
Oh, okay.
And so you could play with them and like kind of figure, oh, this is going to work, or this is not going to work, and figure out ideas before you take. It's like basically like a skate park rail on the ground.
Yeah.
You could figure them out there before you take them onto a real rail.
Yeah, so you were just doing all kinds of new stuff and figuring things out and then taking them to different rails.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. It's just kind of like, because we would go to Chenga all the time, like that 2000, 2001, and just they had some rails there, and just like, man, you're like, all right, let's see what you could do. Let's see if these tricks are possible.
That's cool. And something that one of the people I talked to about this, named Kurt Rowell, he brought up switching your feet. And I was kind of curious in that, was it something that you were doing by choice in like, oh, I'm going to switch my feet and then do tricks? Or was it, oh, I have to switch my feet for this trick idea to work?
I only had one trick where I had to switch my feet for it to work. And that was like doing downside pedal grinds, but with the front foot. So I would turn, I normally turn like counterclockwise, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so to do downside double peg grind, you would, and I only had pegs on one side, right? On the right side. So you would have to go opposite.
Yeah.
Downside. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I was way into the pedal game. And so could I carve my normal way and then switch my feet so my left foot is forward and downside pedal grind like that?
Oh, I could see how it would make way more sense to do it with your left foot forward than your right foot, or than your left foot back going left at it.
Yeah, you get that push. You could pop out of it a little easier.
Yep. Where if it's back, you don't really have any kind of push. It's just awkward.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the only one I ever switched my feet on purposely to do a trick.
Yeah.
And like there was a period of time where we were kind of debating, like, okay, switch footed, opposite, like is it an actual trick to do with your feet switched?
Mm-hmm.
right? And there was like, I think parts video or Kink video, I forget which one, Wasted Days, where there's a rail on the opposite side of the Brooklyn Banks where I like ride up and I switch my feet at the camera and then hop on the rail. So it's like, it's almost like doing a goofy footed rail.
Yeah.
And so it's like my normal side, both feet switched. I don't think I did too much with it beyond that because we were all like, wait, is it a trick? Is it different? Is it better? Is it like, what is it? Like, you ever do the 180 challenge? You probably did that, right?
What do you mean?
Like 180 regular, 180 opposite, switch your feet, 180 regular, switch opposite.
I mean, I'm sure I've messed around with doing that kind of stuff, but I'm a weirdo. I used to like, and even at the trails sometimes, I'll hit a jump, then switch my feet, then hit the next one wrong foot forward, then switch my feet, and just change through the whole set. Where it's just
that's awesome because it like helps you understand your bike.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How awkward it is when you have to feet at first.
Yeah.
But once you do it enough, you're like, okay, I could do it.
And I'm also a big weirdo in that I learned crank flips with my wrong foot forward, so I have to switch.
That's cool. I remember trying to switch crank flips, but I would only just do a half flip. It was just like, oh.
Yeah. So thinking back on it, what were some of like your favorite rail moves that you did back in the day? Or is there really one that like stands out?
Probably just crank slides because I think that's like the most odd, like sideways, like it's not a position. I only like I only wanted a trick you could hold.
Yeah.
Right? Like I remember talking about like head tube grinds and all that stuff. The idea that you couldn't balance on a head tube very well, if I would love to see someone do it, hold it and stuff. But I was like, oh, that's not. I wouldn't count that. So crank slides, you can just lock in. It's surprising that it works.
Oh yeah.
Board slide, most like snowboard, skateboard, like I think it's just such a weird, interesting move.
Yeah. And when, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's probably the favorite, just because feels so good.
And when you see like where people, Ethan Corrier, for example, and like people like him have taken them is just wild. They lock in so well, and it's literally he hits like a curved rail doing one. It's just crazy.
Amazing. It's so good.
Yeah. So Charlie wanted me to mention kick-flipping the UB South Campus black rail.
Yeah, that's the ender of Wasted Days. Kickflip double peg on it.
Yeah.
That was like I think it's the first one. First one done. I feel like Neil Harrington probably not too far, if not right around that time. But that rail is like, it's really steep, really a skinny rail, but man, it did not stick. It had like, and it was just fast, and that was like, it was low. Obviously, when you got a steep rail, it's gonna be low. Just I cannot believe it worked. I'm glad it. This is the only time I ever did that trick on a real rail. It once. I was like, all right, I'm going.
That's so funny because his follow-up text to that says "best rails ever."
And you could just section. You're like, all right, I can just practice like overgrind, like hanger, because it's so steep. Doing a hanger is a little weird. Like that, like over pedal ice it. I don't remember what else, but yeah, it was such a good rail.
That's awesome. Did you have kind of, or even still to this day, do you have a different approach to something that's like super technical? Like actually, I would say at the time, the first crank flip to grind ever would be burly and technical at the same time. But if something was just super technical versus something that's more burly, is there a difference in thought process or approach to it for you?
No, I was all scared of rails. Let's just say that. Like, I feel like I'm a very, like, I had a a method, right? I'd have to do it at a skate park first
Yeah.
before I would do it on a real rail. Like, just that's the way my confidence works. I have to get all these steps down and then go do it.
Yeah.
I don't think it like doing burlier stuff was until far later in my career, in the sense of like, all right, I just felt like, you know, you ever get that you're like, all right, I can do this. That was until later, I think. Yeah, because it's that technical stuff, like, especially if you're not sure if it's been done, or especially for yourself, and like it is knowing what if it's been done, then you know it's possible. But if it hasn't been done, then there's that element of like, is it possible?
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of dealing with that, but like, I don't know. Does that help your question? Does that answer your question?
I don't know. It's just a talking point of like asking and wondering if there's any kind of difference to looking at something where it's like a really technical rail trick versus something that's more burly.
I would say this, like for the burly stuff, it is this idea that like, I always tell people, like, especially the idea of like, you don't jump down 20 stairs if you haven't done 15.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, you kind of build your special meter up, and same like burly, like if I haven't been doing rails for a while, then you're probably not going to start with the biggest one. I mean, it may work.
Yeah.
It may fall back on your experience and your techniques, but I don't know. That wasn't me.
I feel like what you're describing there is the recipe for longevity too.
Yeah, the idea of save yourself, like.
Yeah, you just kind of warm yourself up to things rather than going full send at the biggest thing ever, not really having an idea of I've never done this before.
Yeah, self-preservation's, you know, I came through I finished my career without breaking a bone. And like,
wow.
Yeah. No ligament damage, no like ACLs or anything. So
that's pretty awesome, considering the fact that, you know, a rail is a pretty, like, if you mess up on a rail trick, you never know how you might fall.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I always did this thing where like, all right, you it's like you're about to do a trick and 100% of the trick is this. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? If you've already done 80% of it, then it's only this little bit you got to figure out.
Yeah.
So knowing you just target that, then, you know, and obviously you're never going to get that full 20% until you try the trick.
Yeah.
But you try the trick and be like, oh, I got it now. I can do it.
Yep. I approach things in a very similar way where I break it down. You know, if talking about an air trick, if you've done it, an X up and you've done a 1-footer, you can do a X up 1-footer just by kind of doing this similar thing. Or I can't even think of another example that combines two things like that, but have that similar approach of like, okay, I've done everything that makes this trick up somewhere else.
It's
so
the
now,
Van Homan. I tail whip. I can tail whip, and I can tail whip, or I can do the gap, so I can tail whip, right?
Yeah, tail whip the gap. That's totally a normal mindset on something like that.
Yeah, I guess if I was seeing that, you're like, all right, I guess, all right, that's the logic. All right, that makes sense. But that was a great moment. Obviously, you weren't riding at that point, but it was like, it's the most ridiculous logic ever.
Mm-hmm.
But he did it over the most ridiculous thing. So anything smaller than that makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit to a different thing, because I'm pretty sure I remember you telling me that you rode at the first Warped Tour.
Yeah. There was they had the first Warped Tour. They obviously, it was a tour, and there was one here at in North Tonawanda, and it was like they had like random ramps, like white. I have some photos. All right, my battery's low. I have some random photos. I may have to find the charger here.
Okay, we're going on an adventure.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see if I can find a charger. Is this one? All right. This will work.
Perfect.
I think this will work. I got to figure out how to plug it in.
No worries. I love the adventure of it. We do these live, and they're real.
Christmas tree is over there. It's not doing so great. My cat loves it.
The daily Phoebes.
Yeah, the daily Phoebes. Might just stand over here.
That's funny.
Trying to find some light.
No worries, man. We adapt and overcome, even dead batteries. But so, did somebody approach you for the first Warped Tour, or like, how's that happen?
No, it was like a local thing. Like, I think that's my charger. Trust. Oh, hold on. Let's see.
No worries.
Maybe. I know. How do I know if I'm charging?
You can get out of the thing and see it. It'll just turn the video off for a second.
All right, 1 second.
Yep.
All right, I am in. Charging. My bad.
And we're back.
Okay.
Anyways.
Well, the Warped Tour is like the way it worked was I think it was sponsored by Volcom
Okay.
at the time. And my friend, he was one of the first reps for him. Like I was way into snowboarding at the time. The Warped Tour happened. It would have been it actually would have been summer '95, I believe. But
Okay.
I'm staying in the dark here.
You're good.
So my friend was a rep, and he'd do them, and he got us all in. So it was like I think every tour had some sort of local element to it.
Oh, nice.
And so it was like me and my friends skating, and then obviously or they were skating, I was riding, and yeah, it was just a lot of local friends. But then there was all I can remember was Remy Stratton on the vert ramp, and I don't remember who was skating street, but they had some of the pros, but then they have the local element that always comes in and skates too.
That's really cool. So it was a cool experience being there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was just, again, all my friends, and I did a decade over one of the hips or something, decade jump over and tail up it's 95. You're really not doing too many great tricks, but
A decade over a little hip sounds pretty great.
yeah, that was one of the tricks I could do. It was weird.
Yeah.
Right? Jay Moran did the boomerang airs, and was like, okay, you could do that. Or you saw it possible, and you're like, all right, I can do it.
That's so sick. Were you into any of the kind of music that was there already, or are you just there?
I was so enamored with the bike that I didn't even go see any of the bands.
Ha! That's BMX right there.
Yeah.
That's so sick.
That's pretty much it. You're like, I'm just gonna ride. We got ramps. I am gonna ride for 6 hours straight or more.
That is amazing.
Water? I don't remember drinking water.
Oh, dude. Before I consciously started making myself drink water, I'd just go entire sessions without drinking any water.
Yeah, right? You're just like, oh, that's crazy. But
Oops.
now I can't go 20 minutes and I gotta drink water.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give Charlie's rapid fire things here.
Okay.
First one. La Divina or Ranchos?
Oof.
What are these?
Two restaurants. One, La Divina is really close to me, and Ranchos is... I'm going to give to La Divina, where Ranchos is fine. It's just very basic Mexican. It's very classic family basic Mexican, which is fine. And La Divina is that basic Mexican, but they just have that what's the district in LA or in San Francisco with the burritos, and
I'm not sure.
Whatever that district, it's kind of like that style, but more just tacos and a little bit. I would give it that.
Okay.
Okay.
So then the other one was, ask if he can give a rating out of 5 stars to the steak sandwich at the Pink.
I cannot. I've never eaten one.
Oh my goodness, Charlie, what are you doing with these questions?
Know me. I haven't even.
Jeez.
red meat since like 1992.
See, I thought that, and when he was asking those things, I was like, I feel like
I used to get the chicken sandwich.
that's funny.
You just slather barbecue sauce on it, and you're basically. Have you ever been to the Pink?
No.
The Pink is the dive bar, the classic dive bar of dive bars.
Okay.
Like, it's just literally where you would go at like midnight, and it's this kind of like dive bar melting pot. You kind of get this, like, had the best music. The DJs were great. Had a really good pool table that looked like a pile of garbage, but it was fun to play on, and you would get kooks to come play, and you would get good people, and you had this like hazard of this like phone booth that always would get screwed with. But then for some reason they had food there. You would never think you could eat there. Steak sandwiches, one of them. But then I would used to get the chicken sandwich and just slather it with barbecue sauce. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. But
Nice.
burger with Spike, and I had to leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, what else did Charlie got?
Oh, that was it.
Oh, okay.
I had one
More
on.
questions.
What's that?
I figured Charlie would have more questions.
Actually, wait a second.
He'd be like, "When are you gonna come ride with us?
Come out Tuesday. We're gonna be riding. Maybe.
This Tuesday?" Or
Maybe.
he's saying that?
Not this Tuesday. The Tuesday after Christmas.
Okay.
He brought up how.
Maybe in Columbus. I may be in Columbus.
Oh, well, so we're trading places. Okay.
Yeah. Wait, you'll be here on Tuesday?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
As long as
All
the
right.
weather's not crap.
Yeah, we'll talk to the girlfriend and see what happens. But she's probably watching this, but who knows?
No, but Matt actually just texted me with a couple things, so I'm like, yeah, why not? He said jumping over the diving board at the Shoshone, is that how you say that?
Shoshone, yeah.
Shoshone pool, and then the flare in Bob Edson's garage. He just said those two things.
So Shoshone pool, I don't know. It's this giant pool. It's a city pool that I think it had been skated forever.
Yeah.
But I didn't really find out the existence until like 2020, and it's like 60-foot wide head wall that has like this lumpy, and then it turns into vert. Like, it's smooth but not smooth. It's not a quarter pipe. It's not perfect. But I never played with that wall because if you're looking into the deep end, the left side had perfect vert wall-esque transition.
Yeah.
Like, you could air it. Like, I could air it. So imagine what like Fast and Loose crew could do on this thing. They would go 10 feet out of this thing.
Oh, boy.
It would be amazing. It would be sick. And the best part about it is you can get as much speed as you wanted.
Oh my goodness.
Like,
is it still there and still possible?
No.
Oh.
2019 they took it down to build like a soccer field, which they haven't built yet. But
Of course.
But you know what? Got 20 years on it basically. And so Aaron 2013 Nike skateboarding came to town. Like they had Grant Taylor wanted to skate this pool. They were watching when I bunny hopped over the diving board and in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen that clip.
Yeah, and they saw that, and like, I don't know if Grant skated it before, but they got the pool drained because he wanted to stall the block. He like frontside pivoted on the block, and that was insane. But we never get to ride it in the fall because like hurricanes come up and they just they leave a little bit of water, but if it's warm, then it would go away, right? It would evaporate.
Yeah.
And you could drain it. But when a hurricane comes through and it adds 10 feet of water in it, you're not getting through that.
Right.
But so when Nike came through, it drained it, and it didn't rain for a week.
Oh boy.
So perfectly dry, and for me it was just like, all right, I'm never gonna get these perfect conditions. We have 7 days, and just kind of was trying to get my legs back, and eventually was just like, all right, I've never done that. I want to do that, and just. It was weird because like riding lumpy transition, trying to get over it, but it worked. It definitely scared the shit out of me, but like, 'cause you can't fall in this pool. It's like sand.
Oh.
It's brutal. So no falls. Just got all my skin. It's great. And then what was the other one? Oh, Bob Edson's garage.
He just mentioned a flare in Bob Edson's garage, and he said both in Cheap Thrills for anyone who wants to see this.
Yeah, cheap. Yeah, flare and cheap thrills was just like, it's like the pure ridiculousness, because I think I just learned flare, so you want to put it everywhere you can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so that was like, it's a 2-car garage, and I think I did on the vert wall and basically landed flat, but it was like a 2-car garage, a traditional
Oh
two.
my
It's like Behringer's
goodness.
garage, like flaring in that. Like, I don't know if you remember Behringer's garage,
Yeah.
but like stupid small, but landing flat. Couldn't land any more on the on the ground and not
Yeah.
a ramp. But hey, whatever. I went upside down instead of crash.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, not
It's
too
more
many.
down. You're like, this is kind of stupid, but
Hey man, that's everything I do. It's a novelty. Uh, so I've been meaning to ask everybody this, but I always forget. But I'm curious to hear, like, aside from running, what are you into outside of BMX? Like, what do you do?
what do I do? I like cooking. I like shooting photos a lot. I've been shooting, running, and I was shooting more riding. I don't know. I just haven't had I don't know. But I've been shooting like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
running photos, and doing like kind of motion graphics and stuff like that. But a lot of the running photos lately, just kind of discovering like sides of that sport, especially like the college, like cross country
Mm-hmm.
stuff has been, oh my God, so ridiculous. That's amazing.
Yeah, I had photography written as the thing that I knew was gonna come up for
Yeah,
that, but
guilty.
no, dude, photography's awesome. I mean, I've taken my share of photos too. What do you shoot on?
I have a Canon R6,
Nice.
and so I shoot that, and then, but it's been fun because like I got into a bunch of the like shooting some of the races. Like I went to New York over in March and shot the half marathon, and the woman that I shot photos of the woman. It's just me staying on the sidelines shooting, but like trying to shoot unique stuff and different stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
got some photos of the woman that eventually won the New York Marathon this year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then like I went and shot the Tracksmith Trials of Miles. Trials of Miles? Yeah, Trials of Miles, like night at the track or track night at ICANN Stadium in New York. And that was a cool experience because like all like the top, like there's like your classic photographer, like
Mm-hmm.
running photographer, like he's probably been doing it forever. That's kind of old and whatever, but this was like picture like BMX or skaters, how they dress and how they like their demeanor and all that stuff, but they're running photographers.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, it was like a scene, and it was like, oh, oh, damn, look at all these. There's like they had everyone out, and so it was fun to kind of go shoot that and just kind of, I don't know. It just, I would love to do more, and I don't know, but that's my thing. That's what I like doing.
Yeah, I remember.
Drones, a lot of
That's
drones.
what I was gonna bring up too. I don't remember too much drone stuff lately, but I remember a couple years ago you were posting drone stuff like every day.
Yeah, that was just fun to explore, and I guess I
There's.
don't have I got a real job now, so I don't really have the time to
Oh
go.
yeah,
I
dude.
still have that free time to go out and drone all the time.
Drones are fun.
Yeah, it's just
They're
fun to see places like you don't get to see.
Yeah, from a
Like,
perspective that you'd never ever
yeah,
have.
yeah, it's fun. Like we had snow the other day, and there's a bowling alley by my house, and I just like put the drone up and sat inside the house, and like I didn't go very far. It's like 100 feet, but like
Mm-hmm.
this parking lot was like freshly covered, and there was just one set of tire tracks through it,
Yeah.
and it looks like it looks pretty cool. So it's kind of neat to see the
Oh, duh, I remember that picture you
yeah,
just posted the other day. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's just kind of neat to be like, oh, that's what the world looks like when it's covered in snow. Everything's like diminished, like only the edges are left, and
Yeah.
everything is like black and white.
Uh, and then there's one other thing I'm gonna ask from the chat after this next one though. Because I remember something about like running every street in Buffalo or something. What was that again?
That was 2016. It was like the Mile by Mile project, and this comes from like BMX, right? The idea, like, how you go to a new city or a new place, and you're like, the eyes are looking, like, where
Right.
am
Oh
I?
yeah. No matter where you are. Yeah.
And like in your own place, in your own city, you're like there's got to be spots I'm missing.
Mm-hmm.
What about this street? What if I don't? What neighborhood haven't I been in? And so it was that thought. And the years prior, I've been kind of running different places throughout the city and doing like new routes. And then I was just like, what if I just like I've always wanted to see every street or see like in that search for spots. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna run every street. And that way, I definitely see every spot.
Yeah.
And I didn't find too many spots, but I did run every street.
That's funny.
I did it. I started on January 1st, 2016, and ended up like it was supposed to train for the Buffalo Marathon, right? And so I didn't run any of the marathon course. So I finished everything except for the marathon course. I run the marathon, and then the finish line ends up being the finish line for the race and the challenge at the same time.
Oh, that's so cool. Like how? Go ahead.
It was like, no. It took. Yeah. So the race was May 28th. So it was like 5 months or. Yeah, I can't do math right now. So a little over 5 or under 5 months.
So you did it? Did you do it on purpose to make the? Was it the spot? Was like the where it finished was the last?
Yeah.
That's so cool. What a perfect way to just end that.
It was cool. It was definitely not like the race, the day of the race. It was like so warm that it took me like over 5 hours to do it. Cause I was like, at this point, you can't go for a time. You just have to finish. Otherwise, like the challenge is kind of all for naught.
Oh, right.
Yeah. You just got to finish.
Yep. So. All right, Jim, here it is. Somebody brought it up. We talked about this at the beginning, and you said you're cool with it. So
I'm cool, yeah.
Ask about his Road Fools experience.
Okay, Road Fools 7 was great. I love that time. Well, I will say one thing about Road Fools 7. It was one of the neatest things. I know Heaton and I kind of talked about it, how it was the like new guns, obviously new guns, but it had this old guard of the original Road Foolers.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like a privilege to be able to connect to that.
Oh, nice.
Which was cool, which was a neat experience. I don't know if other Road Fools have gotten that experience, but I was one of the things I recognize. But I'm assuming you're talking about the mirror thing.
I'm assuming that's what's. I mean, it's my buddy. Barry from, I think he's Nebraska. He brought it up at the very beginning, so I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's no problem. Definitely was wrong. It was more of like, yeah, you kind of like a teenager or a young dude, and you don't, it's like you make the mistakes of not fully trying to understand someone before you say something wrong. And I think that's what I said at the end of the Road Fools. The idea that like, like I should have, not said, obviously I should not have said what I said. I should have asked him but I think it was this mix of styles, right?
Yeah.
Like seeing this Dave style where he was kind of gung-ho and doing it, which was like his style. Like, I didn't know there was like such other side of BMX that I was so foreign to. Whereas like it took me a lot of nerve to get to do something big where he seemed like he could just go do it.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow. Because there's another rail he does there that I don't think gets the justice. It's like, I think it's filmed in the middle and there's a small flat section that's so rocky, so rough. It was the craziest thing ever I've seen. It was wild. But again, just different styles. And
so what actually happened? What even happened?
Oh, because it was like me, like Behringer, and maybe Wes, and then Dave was with us. So imagine and Dave was just firing out like rails. Like he was excited and just letting loose. He was really excited and to have his skill and just be able to pull everything. You're like, oh my God, what's going on here? And and he was just and he was like firing out things that would scare the crap out of us, I think, or would make us like take us a bunch of nerve to do it. Definitely take me a lot. And he was firing it out, and it was like, wait, what is going on? Is he, I definitely was like, show us up. What's going on? And that's, I don't know. I don't know. I never got to fully, I guess, understand Dave, like his riding is, because I've never really ridden with that whole scene or got to experience and understand it. So I definitely was out of, made that mistake of talking about something I didn't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't seen what everyone's talking about, so I don't even know what happened.
Yeah, I basically ran my mouth about him.
Oh.
And then as we go through road fools, he didn't see that. Props did it, right? Props saw it, and he didn't know anything about it. And as we went through the trip, I started to understand. Oh, okay. I started to understand him a little more.
Oh, okay.
By the end, I came to terms with the fact that I was wrong, and it was just like, oh, okay, no, it's definitely wrong. That's for sure.
Gotcha. So the record has been cleared, and
yeah, it was cleared at the end of Road Fools. I don't know if anyone got to the end of Road Fools to see it, but
from everybody telling me to ask you about it, I don't think they did either.
Totally fine.
Yeah, and then
I'll have to live with it. It's fine.
Maybe to end this thing, we tell the egg story. Because why not?
Yeah, we'll get them all in. So there was the King of the Road, essentially, that Thrasher King of the Road thing, and Ride UK was trying to emulate that.
Okay.
And I love the idea of that, because he kind of like, I need some things to motivate me, to get me to do things. Because a lot of times it'll work that way. But so 2009, it was the Odyssey team, but I'm not actually on the tour. I'm the team manager.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm driving around the UK. I think we did 1,500 miles in the UK. No, we couldn't have done that much. We did a lot of miles, but we have this van that has a governor on it of like 55 or 50.
Oh, wow.
And the clutch doesn't work. You have
No.
to push so hard. And so by the end of it, like, my leg hurts and I'm just like over it. And then, so one of the challenge, I think, was like, you had to do some eggs. Either had to hit one of your other teams, blah, blah, blah. And here I am. We're at the very last stop. Say the thing ends at 1 o'clock, right? Contest is over at 1 p.m. It's like, okay. And it's after 1 p.m. and Ben Hennon hits me with one. I was like, I had like no clothes, no anything, like nothing clean. And I was just like, he hits me. I'm like, it's after time. No, didn't matter, right? That's fine. But I was like, all right, I could either be seething in anger, or I could just be like, go over and say, how bummed I am. But I meant to say it in a more professional, quiet tone, and eventually it evolved into me yelling at him. And yeah, so.
Oops.
Yeah.
And that's why somebody said Eggman.
Yeah, excellent, right?
Funny.
That's why, like, we had an ad where, like, when I hopped the diving board, instead of the Sunday word bubble, it was just an egg with
Nice.
Sunday written across it. You're like, yeah. But me and Ben made up. It's cool.
That's good.
Yeah, because you know what? I would argue that there's some other political forces to play in part of that, but the blow of it, but whatever. So.
Well, so was BMX? You see yourself riding for as long as you can, or?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I found a hook in my, like, I don't, obviously winter it's a little harder to ride.
Yeah.
But like when it's summer, or when it's the first nice day, or when I can get out, it is like the search for joy. Like this idea of like, I'm literally only going out to find put a smile on my face. And whether that means, bump jumping a curb, or carving a bowl, or, or landing I still got to do a handrail.
Yeah.
So maybe I should wait till next year when I'm 50.
Oh, there you go.
right? Like I got to do a flare, got to do a handrail.
Whew. Downside hand plant.
Yeah, I don't think that one's that hard. I think I could do that one.
I think you could do
Um,
that one.
yeah, it's like one of the, like I was saying earlier, if you can figure out the trick to the trick,
Yeah.
you can come back to it. But yeah, like I literally just don't want to be bleeding and put a smile on my face. And yeah, and I've found a way to do that.
That's
Low
awesome.
expectation that does that.
Yeah. If your expectations are low, you can't be disappointed.
Yeah, no, I just literally just want to go fast and jump things right now.
That's, I mean, that's the heart of it, right?
Yeah, it's the return to youth. That's what you did as a kid, right? Jump those dirt piles at your baseball diamonds, and
I was too scared to do that.
now, yeah,
Yeah, I can remember a time arguing with my neighbor who was 4 years older than me and got me into BMX because I wouldn't go off of a kicker that we made that was, a foot and a half tall. I'm like, I'm not doing it. And just arguing for like a half hour, like, just do it. No, I'm not
that was
doing
my brother. That was my brother.
That's
He's
funny.
6 years older than me, and would always get me like to do. We had this like wooden wagon. He put like a wedge ramp. Like it was just a sheet of plywood laid down, and then he built an extension off of it. But like I remember being in like 5th grade jumping off this wedge thing, like over all this stuff.
That's
and that was
so
like a weird
sick.
moment. Yeah, this weird moment on my red Takara, jumping like at least half of a, basically we had a 2-car driveway, so like jumping not the full length of it, probably 3/4 of it, like 10, and being like, oh, I think I surprised him. I definitely surprised myself.
That's gnarly. That's like,
Yeah,
for a 10-year-old, that's gnarly, dude.
It was an interesting. We probably all have some moment. Like when did you? Well, how old were you when you started riding? 15?
13.
13.
Just turned 13 when I got a real BMX bike.
And what was the first thing that you did that you're like, oh, like surprised yourself?
Oh man, I don't know if I can remember a specific moment or thing. I can remember.
What was the first trick you wanted to learn?
Well, the first actual trick that I learned was a rolling crank flip.
Okay.
But I can. So, my story is a little. I don't know. I remember the first time I ever went to the skate park was the first time I got a real. Like when I got my real bike. Because we went from the skate park to the bike shop, and then the bike shop owner, my dad had worked on his car, so we owed him money. So we got a deal on a bike, and I got a bike that day and went back to the skate park and was dropping in and hitting the spine and all this stuff. But that night, I just saw all of
You
the.
hit the spine on your first day.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And dropped in regular and opposite. I remember that specifically. But I don't know if there's. I think it was just that moment, and all of the really, really good riders were at the park. Like
Which park was this?
Worcester Skate Park, the Lip Lords Park. This one I
Okay.
still ride all the time. Like
Okay.
I filmed Sponge on my Motorola Razr. He 270'd the hip, then he 3'd the spine, then he did a bar to fakie, and the bar to fakie was above coping, and it's just that moment. That actually, you know what? That was it. That video and that moment was the I'm hooked moment.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Uh,
That's cool.
I think
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I think that's the moment, and that's I mean, he and I are still like best riding buddies to this day, and still filming together. And
When was the last time you did an X-up nose wheelie?
he did one at Ray's a couple years ago, maybe
Okay.
like 3 or 4 years ago. We could get him to do another one.
Yeah, you gotta resurrect it every once in a while, and
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a couple other tricks too that I'm gonna try and make him do that he's talked about, and how another X up nose would be great if we get a good spot for it.
Has anyone done like X-up double peg to over X-up double peg?
Whew, on a rail,
Yeah.
I bet anything that there's people who could do it, and we might see that. I don't know if there has or not yet.
Like you have to be able to do X-ups opposite, but
I have a buddy who I don't know if he does predators, but he can do like the regular and opposite X up rides. So maybe.
yeah.
Yeah. Somebody asked, can we please get a 22-inch Sunday? What are you still involved with Sunday at all? What's
I talk to those guys, but I definitely don't, not in any capacity,
okay?
like to point it out. I think, I think the 24 was definitely a struggle
Mm-hmm.
to make, because we put out, a pro level, high quality frame, and
Yeah.
that was just too much for people to try out, right, to see if it worked.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were kind of nervous about sinking money into doing a 22 to see if it would work, right? It's a lot of money and tooling and blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and the thought was like, let's somebody else kind of do it. And now that it's coming around, I don't know what their thoughts are. It would be cool,
Yeah.
um, but I would be gone. Yeah, it'd be a little Model C. It's like a lowercase c,
You might
or
have
a
just,
big 20, or I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I wish it'd be cool, but again, it's just money, really. Or
yeah.
it's just, is the market there?
Yeah.
Are people able to replace the stuff? When they break it.
Right. Yeah, I know there's rims that are available, but I don't know about other stuff. S&M makes fork. There's a couple other things,
Yeah,
but there's not a lot.
I bet the forks they could do. It's just the rims and the tires and the tubes. It's probably the big issue.
Yeah, well, I know Alienation makes rims and tires.
Okay.
They just posted about the new rims coming in today, actually.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
22 inch.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put a word in for whoever that was. Let's see.
There you go. MVP Garage.
Okay, MVP Garage. I'll put a word in.
Yeah. Oh, well, I is there anything else that we want to talk about here? Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't bring up?
I don't know. There was something I forgot. Let's see. Tricks? Oh, I don't remember.
Was it brakes, tricks, pegs, skate parks?
I should get on. I still want to see people do. Has anyone done tail over ice
Yeah, Steve
on a
Woodward.
rail?
Oh, I don't know about a rail. I was gonna say
Yeah.
Steve Woodward just posted one on a double coping spine though.
Okay, that's sick.
Yeah, but I don't know about a rail.
Someone could do it. Like someone did. Who did 270 over ice? Was that Dan?
Foley?
No, no.
Not Dan Foley. Lacey. Duh.
Yeah, did that contest, right?
Yeah.
Or it? Yeah, I'd love to see that one, or even the 270 crank slide become normal.
Shoo. That's possible. That's
Yeah.
so
There's
possible.
Chris, right? There's a dude from Toronto that would do it. He did it at the X Wheels skate park here, where he like landed bottom bracket more. I'm blanking on his name. I'm totally.
On a rail?
Yeah,
Holy
like,
cow.
but not like a real rail, like skate park rail, which is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first. Didn't what's it called? Did it? Swamp guy, Swamp
Trey?
Fest guy. Trey, yeah, didn't he do something 270 crank slide?
I'm not sure. He might have.
Okay, I'd love to see that. That would be cool. I'm just putting requests out for people.
Yeah, the Jim C bounties right now. Let's see 'em.
Yeah, that's a good one. What else? I don't know. There's got to be more.
Chris Silva.
Yeah, Chris Silva. Duh.
That's
Sorry.
the name.
Yeah, he's done a lot of wild stuff, and he's been killing it for so long.
Yeah, he has. He did a freaking 3-tap down on like a rail or whatever that was.
Yeah.
Crazy.
What about like fire slides to fakie down rails? Like,
Yeah, I feel like you'd got to go over.
I don't know. But, well, the one
Or maybe not.
like Trey did that tire slide to fakie, like basically 360 fakie, but tire slide in it. He did it really well in his new like Barcelona video. He did one like,
Oh yeah.
and like that. Pretty wild. Like Barstow tire slide or something like that.
Oh my gosh, on a rail.
Yeah.
They're possible moves, but man. There's a reason why you haven't seen them.
Yeah, exactly. Getting into dream territory here.
Yeah. Well, either way, man, I appreciate you coming on here and chatting with me.
Yeah, I like to talk. I'm a long talker. 2 hours, 18 miles. All right. Yeah.
It was a good time, and I
Hope everyone enjoyed this.
yeah, I learned a lot, and I appreciate it. And maybe I'll get to see you on Tuesday. We'll have to
Yeah.
see.
All right. All right. I mean, we may swap, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, either way, thanks everyone for tuning in, and have a good night. Follow Jim on Instagram. Is there somewhere else where people would want to see your stuff or
I
see
may
ya?
start a YouTube channel. We'll see. But other than that, just at Jim Cielencki. You'll figure out my name. And I do at mile by mile photos, just my kind of like running and sports photos. That I hope it's not just basic sports photography, but whatever. That's where I kind of post a lot of stuff. So
Right
that's
on.
it. Instagram. That's it.
Well, find him on there, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a good night.